All right, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. Glad you could join us. Welcome to the February 2025 meeting of our nonprofit plant-based nutrition organization of Wisconsin, or as we call it, PBNOW. I'm your host, Terry Lynch. The mission of our nonprofit group is to educate, inspire, and support each other on an evidence-backed, whole plant food-based nutritional path for a healthier and happier life. Our group is open to everyone, those plant-based and those just curious about it. It's meant to be a non-judgmental place to get information, inspiration, and support. If you'd like more information about our group, our upcoming meeting dates, speakers, and resources, or to check out videos of our past meetings, just Google us at pbnow.org or just plain PBNOW. As we do each time, can I see a show of hands either by raising your hand or thumbs up icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen to show how many of you are currently following a predominantly plant-based lifestyle? A lot of hands, a number of thumbs. I'd say that's probably a good, from the screen here, probably 30–40%. Thanks, everybody. As we mentioned at the beginning of each meeting, the evidence of the benefits of plant-based nutrition in improving health and quality of life for people of all ages, as published in non-biased medical research, is quite striking. Whether it's improving health through strengthening our immune system, weight loss, preventing, slowing, stopping, reversing problems like allergies, digestive problems, diabetes, heart disease, and early dementia, or increasing our quality of life by helping us feel better quickly, increasing our energy, increasing our endurance, improving athletic performance, speeding recovery from exercise, reducing joint pain, clearing thinking, or reducing the physical, emotional, and financial side effects of the illnesses, drugs, and procedures often recommended to treat the conditions plant-based nutrition can help us avoid. The research shows that our bodies do a wonderful job of healing themselves if we stop inadvertently damaging them daily with poor nutrition and start giving them the nutrition they need to heal and function optimally. It's truly remarkable. Now, let me tell you what's in store for you tonight. Tonight, we'll hear from two speakers. Our first speaker will be our PBNOW Medical Director, Dr. Joshua Liberman, who will speak to us for 10 to 15 minutes with his beneficial monthly comments. Dr. Liberman will be followed by our featured speaker, plant-based icon, Dr. Michael Klaper. At the end of Dr. Klaper's presentation, we should have time for Q&A. And by the way, don't hesitate to pop your questions in the chat box during the presentations, and we'll try to answer as many of them as time permits at the end of the presentation. Tonight's program should end about 7:30 p.m. Central Time. And as a reminder, we have meetings every month, usually on the second Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. Central Time. Next month, we'll be hearing from Chuck Carroll, who's the host of the really popular Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine Exam Room podcast. I think you'll enjoy it. In the future, we'll be hearing from Anna Jane Esselstyn again. We'll be hearing from the past president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, Dr. Kate Collins, among others. And we'll post more information about our upcoming meetings on our website at pbnow.org. If you register on the website or are already registered, you'll receive email reminders of our events as they approach. And last, a quick technical note. During the meeting, everyone but the speakers will be muted, and we ask that you stay muted to avoid background noise and allow everyone to hear the speakers. All right, here we go. Our first speaker tonight is a fellowship-trained cardiologist. He is president and CEO of Wisconsin Cardiology Associates and is past president and current trustee of the Wisconsin chapter of the American College of Cardiology. He's a member of the American College of Cardiology's National Nutrition and Lifestyle Work Group, whose membership includes nationally known physicians such as Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Neil Bernard, and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. He's an advocate for the use of plant-based nutrition to help improve heart health, general health, and quality of life, and has seen the benefits of plant-based nutrition in both his personal life and that of his patients. We're fortunate to have him here at Milwaukee and as our PBNOW Medical Director. I'm happy to welcome Dr. Joshua Liberman. Dr. Liberman.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for the introduction as usual. How's everybody going? How's everybody doing tonight? I hope everybody's well. There's 35 days till spring, so hopefully that keeps everybody going for a little bit longer, even though we're getting dumped on with some snow and some cold weather. So just days are getting longer, nights are getting shorter, and hopefully some nice weather is just around the corner. So everybody try to keep your hopes up and your spirits up. Um, I figured I would do something maybe a little bit different tonight in terms of talking. There were no super, novel or interesting cases that came in. Um, well, okay, that's not true. That's not true. I just thought of it. So last night I did a consultation in the ER at one of the local hospitals for a guy who was in his mid 50s and has not been healthy, and he was fully aware of it. Um, for the last year, his tri and for probably longer than that, but certainly just looking back through recently, for the last 1 to 2 years, his triglyceride level in his bloodstream has been over 500 actually. And so what was interesting was that when they drew his blood at this hospital, it was actually it looked like milk. Actually, it was so fatty that they actually couldn't run the regular analysis on it. And they, with the analyzers that they had available, and they had to actually send it out to a larger hospital with a more advanced lab to be able to determine different levels of different things, because there was so much fat in his blood. And so obviously we got to talking once we had stabilized him, and he knows that he hasn't been eating super healthy, and he was just he just loves red meat and pork loin, and that's what he was predominantly eating. And sure enough, he's overweight, he's diabetic, and his, as I said, his triglycerides were over 500. Well, unfortunately, he underwent heart catheterization, and even in his mid 50s, he had such severe disease that he's going to need open heart bypass surgery. And the other interesting thing, of course, is that I bumped into the surgeon this morning who's going to be operating on him, and we got to talking. I hadn't met him before, so we just got to talking and getting to know each other. And we were talking about the effect of lifestyle on heart disease, of course. Me talking to a surgeon who's going to do bypass surgery. And he was saying that he was talking to another. He's from a different part of the state. The surgeon. He just started working at this more local hospital, and he said that one of the heart doctors that he used to work with up there was telling him about his life story, which was that he had slowly been migrating into a plant-based diet. And he was telling the surgeon that he gave up red meat, he gave up a bunch of other things, but it wasn't until he gave up chicken and fish that this other cardiologist noticed that his own numbers, his own cholesterol numbers and everything got a lot better. Really arguing that it's more than just giving up red meat, it's giving up, anything that's not plant-based. And of course, I have a big smile on my face while I'm hearing the story, because this surgeon doesn't know me. He doesn't know that I'm plant-based. And so I was like, I think your friend that you were talking to, in that hospital is right on. I said, that was certainly exactly my experience too. He said, oh, he's like, oh, you're one of them too, huh? And so we started talking, but yeah. So the interesting story is just, we were talking to the patient this morning, and he's already on board with committing to make some significant changes. Unfortunately, it's a little bit late in the game for him, but it's not too late, right? Because he actually, given how bad his heart disease was, he actually could have dropped dead. I mean, he's actually in a lot of ways lucky to be alive, and lucky to get that second chance to change his lifestyle and certainly change his diet, which he clearly needs to do based on everything we were seeing. So that's the patient example. I hadn't even thought about talking about that until just now. In terms of, as people know on this call, I tend to also like to talk about some interesting research that's come out of late. And just last month, there was a study that came out in the journal Neurology. And something that's certainly near and dear to my heart, because there's some dementia that runs in my family, but also for what's applicable to a lot of my patients, and concerns for a lot of my patients is the concern about the risk for dementia based on our current kind of American lifestyles. And rarely, but sometimes, I'll get a patient that says, well, if I reduce the cholesterol in my diet so much by going plant-based, like, is that actually going to increase dementia because doesn't our brain need some cholesterol? And just, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole too much, but in a nutshell, yes, of course, the brain needs cholesterol, but the brain actually has its own pathway of making cholesterol. It's not actually affected by the systems that are below the neck in terms of how the liver makes cholesterol or how the rest of the body uses cholesterol. From the neck up, they use it uses a totally different pathway, and the cholesterol, the half-life of cholesterol in the brain lasts decades rather than just days and weeks in the peripheral and from the neck down. And so cholesterol that's made up here lasts up there, and so the eating and what you take in has literally no effect whatsoever on the brain's concentration of cholesterol and the brain's ability to use cholesterol. We were designed to have two independent mechanisms for creating cholesterol in case, what probably is the likely reason is in case we had some kind of inborn genetic mutation that knocked out one system, we would still be able to survive because we had the other system to rely on. Well, the brain uses that backup system predominantly, and the rest of the body uses the primary system predominantly. Okay, so with that being said, there was a recent study that came out in the journal Neurology that looked at the long-term intake of red meat in relation to dementia risk and cognitive function in adults in the U.S. And anybody on this call knows that we always talk about how there's a lot of links to red meat and lots of worsened health outcomes. But certainly some of the research over the years maybe has been a little bit inconsistent about the relation of red meat to dementia, mostly because of, I think, the way the study is done. And again, you have to be careful with some of these observational studies because they're usually based on patient recalls or participant recalls. And so someone says, yeah, I don't think I ate a lot of red meat last week, when maybe they don't even realize that anything that comes from a pig is red meat. So you just have to be a little bit careful of that. But in this prospective cohort study that came out, well, actually, I guess it was the end of January, so it's just over a month ago. They looked at two very, very large kind of research groups that have been kind of prospectively studied over the years: the Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professionals Follow-up Study. And these are groups of nurses and health professionals that signed up to be studied, to be guinea pigs, decades ago. And every twice a year they get their blood samples drawn. Twice a year they answer surveys and questionnaires, or sometimes even more frequently than that. And we look and researchers look at their outcomes based on historically, if they say they eat more of this, or they exercise this, or they do whatever, and you can relate that to their blood levels, and you can track them for their outcomes because they're all being tracked. And if you see, and you can look at and see if there's any associations. If you say, okay, this group of people died in the study that we were following, what did they have in common? What were some commonalities? And you can do it prospectively, where you're looking forward, and that's a little bit more rigorous from a scientific statistical standpoint. In any case, these cohorts were very large. There were two different analyses. One was just looking for dementia. The other was looking at cognitive function. The dementia analysis looked at 133,000 individuals, and the cognitive function looked at like 17,000 individuals. And they compared people who reported that they had more than a quarter serving of red meat a day versus people who had less than 0.1 of a serving, 1/10 of a serving per day. And sure enough, even those small differences, more than a quarter of a serving versus less than 1/10 of a serving, there was a 13% higher risk of dementia in the people who had more than a quarter serving of red meat a day compared to those who had less than 1/10 of a serving a day. And they had a 14% higher risk of developing significant cognitive decline. Certainly, they saw that higher processed red meat intake, and we all clearly know that processed red meat is the worst thing you can be eating, but higher processed red meat intake was associated with accelerating aging in global cognition scores, and in verbal memory and other kinds of markers of cognitive function. But unprocessed red meat was also associated with that stuff. So there's a lot of people that say, well, as long as the meat is from a local farm and it's grass fed and it's organic and I know the farmer and all this other jazz, it's not processed and therefore it's safer. Unfortunately, we know that while yes, processed red meat is bad, unprocessed red meat in this study was also associated with a 16% higher risk of significant cognitive decline. And what they showed in the study was that replacing one serving per day of red meat, or certainly processed red meat, with nuts or legumes was associated with a 19% lower risk of dementia and younger brain age based on their cognitive aging scale. So certainly we see about a 20% decrease in either cognitive decline or dementia if you replace one serving of red meat with a serving of nuts or legumes. So again, I would certainly argue, and I'm sure Dr. Klaper and many other people that you hear in this call would argue that the data is very directional, and the direction is that the more plant-based your diet gets, the lower your risk is of dementia, and you don't have to worry about not getting enough cholesterol in your diet to support brain function. So with that, I think I'll hand it over to the rest of the night to Dr. Klaper and everyone else.
Thanks so much, Dr. Lieberman. Our featured speaker tonight is one of our favorites. He's a plant-based icon, a family physician for over 50 years. He's a pioneer in the use of plant-based nutrition and has helped thousands of people to lead healthier, happier lives. He's also a passionate and devoted educator of physicians, teaching them about the importance of nutrition in clinical practice. And authored books and articles, he's spoken at healthcare conferences and medical schools, both in and outside the United States. It's been featured in healthcare documentaries, including What the Health, Cowspiracy, the Diet for a New America. And in 2017, he was given the Plantrition Project Luminary Award. This is the signature award given each year at the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference. The award is given to individuals who've done an exemplary job during their careers, advancing whole food plant-based nutrition as the foundation of disease prevention, suspension, and reversal. Other winners of this award are other icons in this field, such as Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. T. Colin Campbell, Dr. Neil Bernard, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. And just to add to the list of his many achievements and activities, our speaker was a contestant and two-time champion on the ever-popular TV game show Jeopardy! Our speaker tonight will be talking to us from Victoria, British Columbia. It's both a privilege and a delight to welcome tonight's speaker, Dr. Michael Klaper. Dr. Klaper?
Well, thank you very much, Terry, for that lovely introduction and for the invitation to address this wonderful group. And hopefully it'll make this time worthwhile for everyone. I was very impressed with Dr. Lieberman's presentation, and mine will not be so erudite. This is when Terry said about a third of the people who are joining are new to the group and possibly to plant-based eating. I wanted to gear my presentation to them to show how what a appropriate decision it is to adopt a plant-based diet. So, and I've truncated my usual presentation down. Hopefully I can get through this in 20 minutes or so, and then open it up for questions as long as you'd like to keep me around here. I thought I was going to be doing blood and guts medicine throughout my career until partway through my medical travails. I joined the attending staff at True North Health Center in Santa Rosa, California, about an hour north of San Francisco. And at True North, it's an inpatient facility. People would come and stay for 3-4 weeks or longer. And they come from around the world. It's truly a cosmopolitan population from every continent. Everyone who's eating the Western diet winds up in similar kind of bodies that need similar types of therapies. And the people who came to True North were a steady stream of folks with the common 21st century diseases. Most were overweight, if not clinically obese. We saw florid atherosclerotic vascular disease showing up as elevated lipids, elevated blood pressure, obstructive symptoms like angina and claudication. We saw rampant type 2 diabetes with all its complications, and a host of inflammatory diseases affecting every organ system from lungs to gut to joints to immune system. Welcome to Western medicine in the 21st century. And I tell the medical students that no matter what medical specialty you go into, when you open the door in the waiting room or in the exam room to see your patients, the majority of them are going to have some common characteristics. They're going to be overweight, hypertensive, atherosclerotic, insulin resistant, and inflamed. Again, this is Western medicine's patient population that we've co-created, it seems, and that we are obligated to treat and hopefully help these people reverse these diseases. When people came into True North, we did not do the standard therapy of raising their insulin dosage and beta blocker medications. Instead, we put these folks on a diet of whole plant foods. Every breakfast, there's a big pot of fresh oatmeal with bowls of colorful fruits and berries, mango chunks, as well as slivered almonds and sunflower seeds, and a variety of plant milk, soy milk, almond milk, hemp milk. And every lunch, every dinner had big colorful salads, hearty vegetable soups, big plates of steamed green and vegetables, and a variety of filling entrees, no cheese burritos, no oil stir fries, curries and chilies and stews and soups. And these are meals that we wanted them to eat all they want to. There's no portion control, there's no calorie counting, no carb counting. Why? Because Mother Nature, in her wisdom, has made fruits and vegetables and whole grains largely out of fiber and water. And when you eat foods and dishes made of these whole plant foods, you're filling your belly up largely with fiber and water. And how much salad and broccoli can you eat? The point is that if you're eating foods in a whole form, the calorie density is so low in these foods because, again, they're mostly fiber and water, that they generally don't stick to you. And if you go back for a third bowl of vegetable soup, who cares? It really has no metabolic or caloric significance, but it will make you a bit healthier as well. The changes we saw in these people were nothing short of spectacular. Emily came in looking as in the panel on the left. She was almost 100 pounds overweight. And she was on medications for diabetes and high blood pressure. When people came to True North, we not only fed them this wonderful health-promoting diet, but we did not want them to eat this great food while they're at True North, gain all the health benefits, and then go home and fall right back into cheeseburger and buffalo wing and pepperoni pizza land. Because if they do that, all the progress they made will be undone in alarmingly short order. And so while the patients are there, we give them cooking lessons. We take them shopping. We show them how to stock their kitchen, how to make soups and salad dressings and smoothies. We want them to be able to make simple breakfast, lunches, and dinners when they go home, so they don't get seduced into reverting to the food stream that caused all their health problems. Well, the change is remarkable. The obesity begins to melt away immediately. They lose about 2 pounds a day for the first couple of weeks, and it drops down about a pound a day. And as the potassium and the magnesium and all the green vegetables work their way into the walls of the arteries begin to relax and dilate a bit, and that will lower their blood pressure. And when Emily came back 11 months later, she looked like the panel on the right and said, by the way, not only do I lose the weight, but I lost my diabetes and hypertension as well. Carl came in not only overweight, but very inflamed. He had inflammatory joint disease, and he did a brief water fast, then jumped on the plant-based train and left, continuing to eat healthfully. And sent us this picture 16 months later. Clearly spent a little time in the gym, but he wrote Dr. Klaper, I feel great. I'm off my medications. I have no pain, and I'm continuing to eat plant-based. With all the fiber in the fruits and vegetables and resistant starches in the legumes, these folks have their first good bowel movement in years, which improves their outlook on the entire universe. And skin conditions would have an inflammatory factor often clear up. Carl not only had a protuberant abdomen, but he had severe psoriasis. He had plaques open on his shins and on his elbows. He learned how to eat plant-based and sent us this picture 16 months later. Dr. K lost my psoriasis as well as my pot belly, and I'm feeling good. Ali came in severely asthmatic, was pulling on his albuterol inhaler every few hours, learned how to eat plant-based, stopped the dairy in his diet, and sent us this picture 20 months later. Dr. K, I've lost excess weight, but I've also lost my asthma, haven't used my inhaler in months, and feeling really good. This is absolutely remarkable. This is a phenomenon called disease reversal. No one mentioned this to me in medical school. I wish someone had told me that hypertension was reversible. I wish someone told me type 2 diabetes was reversible. I wish someone told me lupus was reversible. But this is the message that I'm bringing to the medical students and young doctors across the country, and that every doctor should share with their patients. People who practice plant-based nutrition and lifestyle medicine get to lean across the desk and say those blessed words to their patients that their conventional colleagues never get to say. How'd you like to get rid of your diabetes? How'd you like to get rid of your hypertension? How'd you like to reverse your lupus? I get to say those words every week to my patients, but my conventional colleagues don't. This is the power of plant-based nutrition, hence the title of the talk. And of course, as the diseases remit, we can lower and then eventually eliminate the medications these folks are on. And when we talk about disease reversal, it's not a California woo-woo concept. We're talking about remission of clinical symptoms where the joints stop hurting, the lungs stop bleeding, the skin clears up. But also their laboratory results normalize, their inflammatory markers go down to normal, and their lipid panels normalize. Wonderful things to see. Question is, how does it do it? What are we looking at? How can this dietary stream produce these changes? Well, as I became a student of the effects of plant-based diet upon these major 9 diseases that most doctors spend the majority of their careers wrestling with in some form or another, all of these, it turns out, have a growing literature validating that they are all reversible to a greater or lesser degree on a whole food plant-based diet. So let's explore some of the mechanisms that might be involved in this process. I wish when I was a medical resident that some attending physician, some chief resident sat me down and say, look, in a few minutes, you're going out to outpatient clinic. You're going to see a river of patients, overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, clogged up and inflamed, and they want you to do something for them to help them regain their health. You can't help them unless you understand exactly why they are sitting in those bodies that have that configuration and those disease entities. So let's get real about the effect of the patient's daily diet upon their body. When one eats a meal of whole plant foods like this, nice healthy salads and vegetable soups, some steamed greens, no oil stir fry, some fruit, you have a meal like this. And if an hour later I were to sneak up on you with a needle and a syringe in my hand, and when you weren't looking, I drew 5 cc's of blood into a red top glass tube, let the blood clot, put it into a centrifuge and spin it down, and pull the tube out, what we would see is blood that looked like this. The red clot goes to the bottom, the liquid part, the serum, rises to the top, and the serum is crystal clear. You can read newsprint through normal serum. This is what your blood should look like after you eat a meal. But you eat a standard Western meal. You have bacon and eggs for breakfast, a cheeseburger for lunch, fried chicken for dinner, dairy through the day, and the saturated fat in the beef, the butter fat in the cheese, the egg yolk in the mayonnaise, and the egg yolk fried eggs. all this fat oozes out, not to mention the chicken fat and the vegetable oil. All this fat oozes out into the blood. And for the next 5 hours, your blood looks like this. This creamy appearance is called lipemia. The word means fat in the blood. Lipo is fat, emia is in the blood. Postprandial means after eating. So this is the fat in the blood that appears after eating. It's mostly triglycerides and saturated fats, largely the fat of the animals these people just ate. Now, not everybody shows the fat this optically densely, but everybody has a wave of fat that goes through the bloodstream after you eat a fatty meal. How can you not? Where's it going to go? And I was serious about that 5 hour number. Here's a classic study where they gave someone a fatty meal at hour 0, and they drew blood once an hour for 6 hours. They took those blood tubes, put them one after another into a spectrophotometer, measures how fatty the blood is getting. And you can see the blood getting fattier and fattier and fattier. And it takes the liver 5 hours to begin to clear the fat out of the blood. And during this time, the artery walls are getting injured, the LDL, that's atherogenic, is increasing, abdominal obesity is increasing, not a healthy state. But there's more than fat in this blood. I focused on the fat to start with. It's the most visibly obvious, but there's a lot more that flows through your bloodstream after every fast food meal. In fact, these 16 marauders of health are what I call the postprandial red tide. And I'm just going to quickly touch on these. The saturated fat is pro-inflammatory, sets off inflammation throughout the body. The sugars like fructose, maltose, dextrose stick to proteins all over the body. They glycosylate proteins, stiffen them, oxidize them, create free radicals that rip electrons off your cell membranes and DNA. Fragments of animal tissue leak out into the bloodstream, setting off immune reactions in joints and other tissues. The high salt diet not only raises blood pressure, increasing the risk for congestive heart failure, but also opens the door to autoimmune diseases like lupus. When you grill the burger, fry the chicken, broil the steak, you're inevitably creating free radicals as you cook the animal muscle. Again, they rip electrons off your DNA. Advanced glycation end products are teeming with free radicals. They are created every time you cook meat, but also cooking carbohydrates at high temperatures. The chips and the French fries and the cookies are teeming with AGEs that age your tissues. Excuse me, emulsifiers keep the ice cream soft in your mouth, but they also dissolve the intestinal mucus that lines your GI tract and which in turn makes your gut leakier and more permeable after you slather emulsifiers on them. This is polysorbate 80 and carrageenan, those ingredients on the candy wrappers that you never really know what they're saying. They're emulsifiers that dissolve your intestinal mucus. Cooking the meat oxidizes cholesterol, it's atherogenic. I'll briefly touch upon these other ones, all related to meat in the diet. But this is what floods through your tissues with every meat-based meal. It's a fatty tide, it's a salty tide, it's a sugary tide. It sets off immune reactions, so it's antigenic. It's full of phosphates and sulfates that create phosphoric and sulfuric acids that the kidneys have to neutralize in the bones. Damages your genes, so it's mutagenic. It sets off cancers, it's carcinogenic, clogs your arteries, it's atherogenic, it's pro-inflammatory, disrupts enzyme reactions throughout the body. This is the red tide that your patients are inflicting upon themselves day after day, or your neighbors if you're not a healthcare professional. This is what most Americans are doing to their bloodstream every 4 hours, breakfast, lunch, dinner, bed. We are plant-eating hominids like the gorillas, and yet our diet is devolved into one of cooked animal flesh. No gorilla would eat this kind of food, and as I mentioned, it sets off inflammation, which eventually makes our organs malfunction. And if you were pouring kerosene, diesel fuel into your gasoline burning engine, you wouldn't be surprised when the spark plugs cake up with carbon and the catalytic converter is destroyed. Well, our metabolic engine was also malfunction if it's given the wrong fuel. And indeed, this is not the fuel for us. Ask any buffalo, giraffe, elephant, or gorilla who grow these magnificent bodies on plant-based foods. we are plant-eating organisms, and we need to obey natural law when it comes to our food choices. And it has real-world consequences. In the clinic, when the doctors open the door and they see the man with the chest pain from his angina, clogged arteries, with severe chest pain, and the lady with asthma pulling on her albuterol inhaler, and the man with the diabetes injecting insulin, and the woman with the acne-scarred skin. When you ask the professors who look in the textbook for the cause, etiology unknown. We don't know the cause of these diseases. And it's true, we've not teased out every last enzyme and gene reaction, and there's a lot to learn on that level. But to say that we have no idea what's causing these diseases, is this not 50 years of this man damaging his arteries with red tide foods 3 times a day? Is this dairy-loving lady not suffering the effects of the proteins that she's running through her bronchial membranes, making bronchospasm happen? As this man eats a high-fat diet, it's clogging up his insulin receptors, giving him diabetes. And if you Google dairy protein and acne, you'll see the connection for this woman. The food effects over time equal the health effects. How can it not? And even if the doctors don't recognize it, or the lay public needs to, which is one reason I'm giving this presentation. So finally, there comes that day when the man or woman gets, as they're getting out of the shower, they catch a glimpse of themselves in the mirror and they don't like what they see. They don't like their big protuberant abdomen. They don't like their sore, swollen joints. They don't like the medicine cabinet full of pills. And that voice in their head says, I got to change something. I can't keep doing this. And so they're in the doctor's office saying, Doctor, tell me what I need to do to get my health back. There's a few things they need to do, but first and foremost, number one on the list that the best of lifestyle doctors should tell this patient is start consuming a food stream of mostly whole plant-based food, just like they serve at True North. This is what this man should do. As soon as he says, okay, doc, I'm on board, let's say for sake of argument, because many people transition gradually, but if they say, I'm in, boots in, like they say in New Zealand, I'm fully plant-based. I cleaned out my fridge, cleaned out my pantry, went shopping. I know how to make salads and soups and steamed veggies. What's going to happen, doc? Here's what's going to happen. First of all, here we are back when the man's still eating the standard Western diet, and the red tide molecular marauders are still in their tissues. As soon as they say, I'm done, I'm stopped eating animals and the processed food and the oils and the sugars and all that toxic food, and I'm fully on the plant-based train. As soon as they say that, look what happens. The most important thing that happens is that the red tide stops. There is respite. Every cell in your body has instructions on its DNA to know how to repair membranes, repair organelles in the nucleus, knows how to fix itself, but it can't do it if the red tide is flooding through those cells every 4 hours. Do you know in your cells, along your DNA strands, you've got globular proteins that go up and down all day, 24/7, looking for mismatched nucleotides and genetic instructions. And as soon as they find them, they fix them. They don't ask your permission. They just fix your DNA 24/7. When I read that in the physiology book, I put the book down and applauded. What a brilliant mechanism. But those mechanisms can't function fully if you are sending the red tide through your cells every 4 or 6 hours. When you finally let those repair mechanisms function optimally, here's what happens. These molecular marauders are finally replaced by an entirely different set of molecules from the whole plant foods the person's been eating. Let's consider these individually. First of all, it's a high water content diet. All the soups and the salads and the steamed veggies and the fruits all have lots of water in them. Now, when you eat a standard Western meal full of saturated fats and oils, those fats coat the red cells, and the red blood cells start sticking together. Your blood becomes more viscous, becomes thicker, harder to force viscous blood through tiny capillary beds, and they don't deliver oxygen to the tissues as well as they could if they were more free flowing. Well, when all that water starts coming into the bloodstream, the water gets more liquidy, it gets more free flowing. The blood viscosity goes down measurably, and folks who exclude meats have significantly lower blood viscosity. So now there is a surge of oxygen and nutrients flooding through the capillary beds in the brain, heart, kidneys. But something additionally wonderful happens because all the dark green leafy vegetables you're now eating increases the production of nitric oxide in the walls of the arteries. And the nitric oxide uh, has the effect of dilating the arteries, allowing dilation of the artery just a little bit, a tiny little fraction. But it's an important little dilation. Why? Because of a law in physics called Poiseuille's law. And Poiseuille's law says, right out of the physics book, that the flow of liquid through a tube will increase by the fourth power of the increase of the radius. And so that means that if the radius of an artery increases by a factor of 2, the blood flowing through that artery increases by a factor of 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 by a factor of 16. And so a small dilation means a big increase in blood flow. And you know this yourself in the real world, that you're trying to suck a liquid up through a skinny straw. Just a straw twice as wide gives you a whole lot more liquid into your mouth. Well, the same thing that happens with your arteries as well. And so now there's a surge of more free-flowing oxygen and nutrient-rich blood through your brain, heart, lungs, kidneys. That certainly helps not only nourish your tissues, but lowers your blood pressure as the arteries get a little bit wider. When you pull the animal fat out of pull the animal flesh out of your diet, you're pulling out stuff called arachidonic acid, which is the main driver of inflammation in the body. And you're pulling that right out. And now all the fats are coming from plant oils, many of which are, and these are plant fats, like in the walnuts and flax seeds. And they are anti-inflammatory if they're in the omega-3 family. So you've changed the entire inflammatory balance of the tissue beds from pro-inflammatory to anti-inflammatory. That's huge. Now that we know what a big role inflammation plays in every pathology from arthritis to depression, it's great to make your tissues more anti-inflammatory by pulling out the animal flesh. The the fried foods, the sugars create free radicals, as I mentioned, and the initials are ROS, reactive oxygen species, but there are these atoms missing an electron, and your tissues are teeming with them if you're eating chips and oils and fried foods and sugary foods. Now that you change the food stream to all these colorful salads and veggies, these veggies are colorful because the pigments making them colorful are antioxidants. They quench free radicals. And so as these antioxidants flood to your tissues, it quenches free radicals. So the oxidative stress in the tissues goes down. That's just huge as far as retarding tissue aging. When you change the food flowing through the gut, you're going to change the microbes that live in that gut. If you're eating eggs and meat, you're going to foster the growth of organisms like Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes, especially, that are not friendly fellows. They irritate the gut wall. They promote inflammation and cancers. Pull out the meat and the eggs, and now all the material coming through the gut is from plant fiber, and that promotes the growth of Proteobacterium microbes, which are much friendlier critters that put out a much less harmful side byproducts as far as the gut wall goes. But also, these Proteobacterium organisms just happen to produce chemicals that make you feel good. They produce dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine and oxytocin. These are feel-good chemicals that get out into your bloodstream and improve your mood. People often say, hey, since I went plant-based in my diet, I'm feeling happier. That's not a placebo effect. That's a gift from your refurbished microbiome. When you stop eating other animals' cholesterol, your own cholesterol is going to become less atherogenic, and you're going to be absorbing less endotoxin, which is easier on the arteries. Um, as guys change their animal fats for plant oils, they notice their body odor disappears often as a result of the plant oils now finding their way into the skin secretions. The cows in the dairy have all been genetically modified. They're now pregnant now, and a pregnant cow is going to put estrogens into her milk, and that gives women breast lumps and fibroids. It gives guys unstable prostates and man boobs. Not a good thing you don't need any milk from a cow anymore. You need the milk of a giraffe, and when you stop eating it, your hormone levels normalize. High protein diets are not friendly to the kidneys. When all those amino acids slam into the filter membranes, they force that filter membrane in the glomerulus to thicken and create a state of hyperfiltration that can lead to chronic kidney disease and eventually dialysis. Um, when you go plant-based, the lung secretions get thinner, the asthmatic folks wheeze less, the white blood cells normally go down, not because there's an immune deficiency, but because you're not franging your bone marrow with endotoxin 3 times a day, um, all the way around. In fact, if you look at these profound changes in organ systems throughout the body, if someone were to ask me, doctor, in a word, when someone changes their food stream from an animal-based food stream to a plant-based food stream, what changes in the body? What changes in the body when you go from animal-based to plant-based? What changes? Everything changes. It's a different physiology. The blood flow changes, the blood viscosity changes, the oxidative stress in the tissues, the inflammatory balance changes, the blood lipids change, hormone levels change, renal function change, your gut, your microbiome, everything changes. It's a different physiology. And that's what allows Emily and all these patients that I showed you undergo these wonderful changes. I could spend 2 lectures just going to each organ system showing you how they benefit from a plant-based diet. But as Dr. Lieberman knows, studies have shown that diseases we thought were relentlessly progressive, like atherosclerotic plaques in the artery walls. This is man's right coronary or left anterior descending artery. These plaques can melt away under prolonged use of a whole food plant-based diet. The plaques melt away, and this artery turns into this artery. Perfusion scans in a heart muscle, red is good blood flow. This man's blood arteries are all choked down due to atherosclerotic plaques. Went on a plant-based diet just for 2 weeks. But you get that subtle vasodilation, maybe a little melting away of some plaques, and as a result, this perfusion scan turns into that perfusion scan. I saw this in 1977. A 65-year-old man with severe angina had to stop every 9 or 10 paces, went on a plant-based diet. 6 months later, he's climbing mountains in the Lake District in England. It's a remarkable regeneration of artery health. Arteries all over the body open up, much to the delight of people at home. And I'm sure she's overjoyed that his retinal arteries are delivering more blood flow to his eyeballs there. But seriously, all organs benefit from increased blood flow. But can you get enough protein? Absolutely. Ask any elephant, any buffalo, any gorilla. The plants have the protein. And if you make 3 meals a day on whole plant foods, the protein in the beans and peas and chickpeas and lentils and nuts and seeds and whole grains are going to be more than ample. 3 meals a day of these whole plant foods can easily give you 80 grams of high-grade protein or more. It can, as I said, melt away artery blockages. And in this age of Ozempic, it really is the key to overcoming. I have to roll my eyes when I see, these commercials for weight loss. And often there's a little crawler at the bottom saying, these results not typical. Well, these results are typical. This is what you see. And the reason that these remarkable changes can happen on a whole food plant-based diet is for what I just reviewed, what happens when you go from animal-based to plant-based food stream. Uh, and so Ozempic at $1,000 a month, it's so sad for me and all the side effects and hard getting off these drugs. All people really need to do is eat a whole food, plant-based diet, keep their belly full of soups and salads and steamed veggies, and the fat will melt away. It may take you 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, but you can't hold weight on this food. It's mostly all fiber and water. And vegans are generally universally lean. If they're not, it's because they're eating baked good and oils and hidden fats and desserts, etc. But if they're eating truly whole food, plant-based, you wind up looking like a greyhound, not a Saint Bernard. Um, are there barriers? Yeah, culturally it can be an issue. Well, our culture, we eat meat and cheese. Yeah, that's true. Many of them, have those foods in it. But also the reality is that most every ethnic group on the planet has a long, rich history of plant-based cuisine. The Italians can make wonderful pasta dishes and minestrone soups using whole plant foods only. The folks in South Asia make these wonderful curries and chickpea masalas and plenty of plant-based eating from South Asia. The Latin American folks make great plant-based burritos and tacos and enchiladas. Not a problem. You don't have to put meat and cheese in them. The folks from Asia love their noodle dishes and tofu, and there's plenty of ways to make that deliciously. So the cultural issue should not be a barrier. But it's expensive to eat this way, I'm told. It really isn't. That's another myth. Why? Because the staple foods that people fill their bellies up with that provide the most calories and protein, beans, peas, chickpeas, lentils, potatoes, they're cheap. You can buy a 10-pound bag of rice for a little over $6.50. You buy a 10-pound bag of lentils, a little over $12. 2 cups rice, 2 cups of lentils that give you almost 50 grams of protein. It's enough for any adult in our society here. Again, make these bulk purchases of whole grains and dried beans and potatoes. Make these big, glorious pots of soups and stews and chilies and freeze half of them, and you can eat off of them for days. This is very economical ways of eating. It's not expensive at all. And if you involve other family members, often it becomes a unifying factor in your family constellation. So about the end here, so where do you start? For the people who are new to this, who've just wandered into this meeting, I had no idea we were talking about this. This is, take a screenshot of this picture of this slide, because it's a key for you to get started. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Start with one meal at a time. Please go to the website called Forks Over Knives, see the film there, and then come back to the website. They've got great recipes and transition plans. At least have a salad most every day and put your veggie portions larger and larger each day. And I urge you, get this charming little book. It's a thin little book. You can read it in a couple hours by Rachel Brown called For Fork's Sake. And she starts at square one. She takes you shopping. Here's what you need in your kitchen. Here's what you should bring home with you. And she makes it real simple. Here's how you make simple breakfast, lunches, and dinners. Short, funny, easy to follow here. You go to my website and download my healthy eating plan as well. And again, the Forks Over Knives document. If you're puzzled by the title, the fork is a dinner fork. The knife is a scalpel going down your chest for a bypass. Or believe me, you want the fork over the knife, absolutely. And find there's more than just literature for you to read and movies to watch. There are people, live allies who will help you. Rochester Lifestyle Medicine has a great Jumpstart program. The Forks Over Knife folks have a great transition program. So does Plan Strong. Physician Committee for Responsible Medicine has a 21-day kickstart. Seek and you shall find. There is help out there. Take a snapshot of this screenshot or just a picture with your cell phone and follow up and connect with these folks, and they will get you on the road to healthy eating. So I've, at this time in my career, after 50 years of primary care, I've delivered enough babies, I've sutured enough lacerations, I have set enough fractured bones. The best thing I can do with my time and energy left in my career is reach the medical students with this plant-based message. And that's what I've been doing, going to the medical schools in person or by Zoom and giving them this presentation and telling them that view me like the scout from the front lines who's been in the battle for years, reporting back to the reinforcements about to enter the fray with some important messages. Most important, it's the food. It's been the food all along. It's not bad genetics. It's not the plasticizers in the containers. Those are issues, but it's the food. It's the food. It's been the food all along. And the most important message is to give to both the doctors and the public. These are reversible diseases. I wish someone had told me that. These diseases are reversible, and a plant predominant diet is the key to reversing them. And if I can get that message into the heads of enough young doctors, then they can start relaying that to their patients. Every doctor is caring for about 2,000 patients. Every plant-based physician I can wake up will have a huge ripple effect throughout the society until eventually it becomes like Schopenhauer's, it becomes self-evident. Of course, we eat plant-based. Doesn't everybody? That's what we're trying to create, and you can help by becoming plant predominant in your life as well. So we have these wonderful changes that's happening. Um, we want to bring this to every patient. And I tell the young doctors, why did you go into medicine if not to help people make this wonderful health transformation? It's the most exciting moment in medicine to help your patient regain their health. What else is there what higher calling is there for doctors to do? So that's what I'm doing, and part of this is coming to Milwaukee and sharing this information with you. So I know most of us probably wasn't new, but maybe something went by that may have inspired you. And if that's the case, I'm a happy doc tonight, and I'll open the session up for questions, and really appreciate your time and attention.
And what a power-packed presentation and entertaining at the same time. And if I got on Jeopardy now and try to answer all the questions, if those were in categories, I'd have an easier time based on the way you explained it. But that is a lot of information to pack in. So let me jump to the questions here. And I know some of these have been answered by Dr. Lieberman. Let's see. So I'll start at the top. So Marjorie asks, so allowing regular fish in the diet could be a problem? Is there a question?
Yes, fish in the diet can be a problem. It used to be a healthy food, a brain food. Those days are over for a number of reasons. One, we've been treating the oceans like sewers, and the little fish take up the microplastics and the dioxins and the pesticides and the herbicides and the heavy metals, and the bigger fish eat the little fish, and the bigger fish eat those fish. And so these toxins bioaccumulate in the fish flesh. So the big predator fishes, salmon and tuna, wind up as the recipients of all these bioconcentrated toxins. So when you look at that piece of wild caught salmon, you have to, what's in it? What was that fish really eating? Is one issue. But very importantly, we have strip mined the oceans. We are clear cutting the oceans with these 10-mile wide nets that scoop up every living creature. And for every piece of wild caught fish on your plate, there's dozens of dolphins and whales and sharks and rays and seabirds that have been drowned in those nets. And and it's coming back to haunt us. Not only are we destroying the oceans, but all the fishing nets that that the fishermen get cut loose and are floating in the ocean, and they're all breaking up in the sun and the waves, produce these little microplastics. As I mentioned, the fish take them up in their fish flesh, but half the fish catch is ground up and added to animal feed. And so it's winding up in the flesh of the cows and the pigs and the chickens. Cows are the biggest ocean predators on the planet today, and and so the people who eat the cows and the pigs and chicken are getting the microplastics. Is estimated. I've seen some estimates. People are eating a credit card full of plastic once a week if you're eating meat and fish. And so for all sorts of reasons, we've used fishing up, no matter what it was in history. We turned the page. We've used fishing up. Let the oceans heal. Let the fish off the hook. We've beat up on them enough. The oceans will heal if we give them the chance. But time to become plant eaters. Let the fish swim.
Annette says, what do you feel about Dr. Walter Longo's longevity and cancer prevention diet? I don't know if you're familiar with that or not.
I'm not familiar with that particular.
I've heard of it, but I don't.
Right,
But I don't know it that well. Next, Ann says, I would like to be completely plant-based, but my doctor and a nutritionist are telling me to eat fish and chicken because I'm underweight, not getting enough protein, and in my 60s. But I feel better plant-based, and I think better for autoimmune problem. I would appreciate thoughts, and Dr. Lieberman did put an answer in there, but if you'd like to add to it.
Sure. Forgive them. They know not what they do. I'm embarrassed by my profession to hear that advice. This is from the 1950s. They're giving you advice, it's to have to apologize for my profession. I do it frequently during the week because of this ignorance. No, you don't need animal fat. If you're underweight, there are things you can do. And if you need more protein, there are ways to do that. Google weight gain smoothies, and you can you can do up a smoothie for yourself, throw some protein powder in there. But you want more protein, then make up a big lentil stew. They have a bean burrito, they have a hummus sandwich, bean chili. Find ways to get legumes into your diet, and between the weight gain smoothie with nut butters and protein powders, as well as the extra legumes, the weight will come up there. So be patient, but you don't need to eat a chicken or eat a fish to get protein. Yeah, ask any gorilla; they never eat chickens or fishes. They're not protein deficient.
It's something you mentioned for breakfast. You were putting, I think, certain kind of seeds. Pumpkin seeds is something I love, and they're packed with protein.
Absolutely, we like pumpkin seeds. Yes, good for you to have zinc. We need that.
Let's see. Is there? So Marjorie asked, is there evidence that introducing fish can be harmful? Well, we just covered that. So, Shelley, how long do people stay at True North?
Yeah, before we
Terry,
leave, wait,
Terry, a former person who's gone there, gave her answer. But if you,
yeah,
if
before
I,
we leave, when the last question went by, is there any evidence of fish causing harm? Please, if you're not familiar with Dr. Michael Greger's wonderful website, nutritionfacts.org, go to nutritionfacts.org, and in the search, put in ALS, put in amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, put in ALS, and you will see the connection between fish eating and that horrible, horrible disease of ALS. There are toxins that accumulate in the fish flesh that really put fish eaters at higher risk for that dreadful condition. So yes, there are studies showing that fish eating can be harmful. Now, Terry, you asked about True North. How long do people?
yeah, the question was, how long do people stay at True North?
Right. Without being coy, as long as they need to. We have people come in just for the weekend. And we have people come in on the holidays because they don't want to deal with the dead turkeys on the table there at Thanksgiving and at Christmas. And they just come in for a few days. People come in for do a 5-day fast and a refeed for 1 week. But the people with got the new serious problems, with the runaway lupus, runaway high blood pressure, they come and stay for weeks. And they may do a water fast for days and days if we need to like a fire extinguisher to put out the inflammatory fire. So we've had people stay there 3-4 months or longer. And so again, Dr. Goldhammer lowers the price to make it as affordable as possible, but you stay as long as you need to. It's your life we're talking about getting out from under these horrible diagnoses. You stay as long as you need to, or as long as you can afford it.
And I don't know that, I think that Dr. Goldhammer has actually put together a study. I don't know if it's been published or not, but but you've spent enough time there. If you were to say out of 100 people who come in, what percent have improved their health?
Oh, 90+% have improved their health. How long do they stay on it, and what happens when they leave? They're adult people, make their own decisions. But as far as the improvements they get, there's no question eating that True North food, with or without a water fast, is going to do good things for your everything, for your microbiome, your inflammatory balance. So yes, people benefit big time from health.
Dr. Lieberman mentioned that when you were putting up the two different vials of blood, the fatty one was, and I don't know if you heard his whole talk
No.
today, but he was talking about somebody who came in with extremely high. I'm trying to remember.
Triglycerides or
Triglycerides.
Right,
cholesterol.
triglycerides.
Yeah, right.
Josh, are you there?
What
I'm
did
here,
he
yep.
say? Yeah.
And he just commented that the vial that you put up there was what his patient's blood looked like. That it came in so fatty they had to send it to another lab.
Yes, that's what it looked like. Absolutely.
Mary says, please comment on protein. I know that beans and legumes have protein, but there's so much focus now on adequate protein in the news. And you did talk about that, but if you just spend some more time.
Legumes. A legume is anything that grows in a pod. So beans, peas, chickpeas, lentils are all legumes, and they are especially protein rich. And protein's a thing. You don't want to ignore it. And so make it an art form in your general food choices and your food preps. If you're making the soups or the stews, whatever, find ways to get legumes into your dishes there. Well, lentil stew, loaf, bean burritos, hummus sandwiches. Find ways to get these legumes in, and you'll be able to meet your protein needs quite handily and very deliciously. I don't know if that was the question, but yes, it's important, but doable.
Let's see. Andrea says, just from eating partial plant-based, my triglycerides are now normal and my cholesterol went down.
Bravo, good for you. And that's just partial plant-based, whatever that means. But your body is looking for plants. We are plant-eating creatures. We have the same digestive system the gorillas do. And I've never had a gorilla in the office saying, Doc, I can't keep my hands off those cheeseburgers. They know what to eat. And it's not completely vegan. I'm sure the occasional beetle and grub and termite goes down their gullet, but the vast majority of what these creatures eat are whole plant foods. And so I urge us to follow their example.
Nick, Frankie says, I tried not eating meat or dairy and going plant-based and my cholesterol went up. Triglycerides went up. It was so discouraging, but I still believe in this approach, but everyone's genetic makeup is different. And I know I saw just something you did maybe 6 years ago talking about cholesterol, and if somebody's
Yeah.
eating plant-based and they do have higher cholesterol numbers, that it was something that you were not concerned about. You gave a real good explanation as to why.
Right. So there's a lot in that question, and I honor his concerns here. A couple of things. Especially when one initially goes on a plant-based program, you may see increases in cholesterol or triglycerides. Why? Uh, if you're eating too much in the way of refined carbohydrate, too many flour products, even if they're vegan chocolate chip cookies or anything made of these rapidly absorbed carbohydrates, um, your body is going to turn the fructose in those products into triglycerides. And so it might be a sign of just too much refined sugars. So have an honest look about what you're really eating. Is there anything coming out of packages and boxes? Um, Second, if you start losing weight, which many people do, as your fat cells empty out, the cholesterol that's stored in those fat cells comes into circulation. And if you draw some blood, you're going to see that cholesterol that's emptying out of your fat cells. It's not a disease. It's not, you don't have familial hypercholesterolemia. Let it happen. It'll go up, it'll come down. The question is not how high is your cholesterol. The question is how healthy are your artery walls. And if you're not damaging your artery walls with the meat and the dairy and the fried foods and the sugars and all the processed chemicals, you're not damaging the artery walls. A transient surge of cholesterol for a few weeks or months is not going to do you any harm. And so I call it the tyranny of the numbers. We freak out at these numbers. But your body knows what it's doing. Again, we are the gorillas in the wild do not develop atherosclerosis, and as Dr. Lieberman was implying, I'm assuming your own liver is making this stuff. You trust your liver; it knows what it's doing, and it might need an extra jolt of cholesterol out in the bloodstream for a few weeks. It's okay. Um, I have a video on my website called Beyond Cholesterol, which Terry is referring to, and you can look at it. And it talks about if you've got high cholesterol, whatever. Question is, measure your inflammatory markers. Are your artery walls inflamed? The plaque formation induces inflammation. If they're not inflamed, and if you go to get an ultrasound of your carotids and they don't show any plaque, relax. You don't have the disease of atherosclerosis, even though you had this surge of cholesterol. Everybody freaks out over the numbers, but again, the question is how healthy are artery walls, and it doesn't sound that it was a transient rise in cholesterol that were doing any damage to your arteries. So I say stay on the plant-based train. Those cholesterol numbers and triglycerides will come down.
Andrea says, what about pasta with veggies or veg? Do you recommend that?
Pasta with veg is great, yay, but beware the oil. Why? Especially if you're trying to lose weight. There's something called oxidative priority, and it means it's easier to burn sugars than burn fats. And so it's easier to blow apart a glucose ring than clip apart a long chain fatty acid. So what? It means that if you eat sugar and fat at the same time and they both enter your bloodstream, the body says, sugar, fat, I'll burn that sugar now, I'll store that fat for later. And so one of the main driving forces of obesity is people eating fat and sugar. If you're eating a vegan chocolate chip cookie, there's sugar, obviously, in the flour and the chips, but there's some fat holding it together. There's a shortening. If it's non-vegan, there's egg yolks or something, and it's that fat-sugar combo that sticks to you. If you're eating fried chicken and French fries, you're going to burn the sugar in the French fries. You're going to store the fat in the chicken and the vegetable oil. Same thing if you're pouring oil on your pasta. You're creating that fat sugar combo. You're going to burn the sugar in the pasta and store the fat in the oil. So if you're lean, or if you're like that first lady who needs to put on some weight, of a little again, the oils, they're not friendly to the body. They don't do good things for your artery walls. They inhibit nitric oxide production. They inhibit blood clotting. They increase insulin resistance. No oil is friendly to the body. Now I gave a talk about oils, and afterwards a man came up and said, "Listen, I'm a chef in an Asian restaurant. Are you really telling me that 2 drops of sesame oil in a dressing is really going to give anybody heart disease?" And yeah, of course it's not, because that's the proper use of oils as a flavoring. And half a teaspoon of olive oil, especially in a spray bottle on your salad for that oil, for that olive essence, that's okay. But man, don't be pouring oil on your pasta or your salad. Ooh, Mediterranean diet, ooh, heart healthy. That's a recipe for weight gain and abnormal function in your body there. They're not food.
Megan says, thanks for your presentation tonight, Dr. Klaper. You've been such an inspiration. My husband and I are 8 years whole food plant-based. I had a healthy whole food plant-based pregnancy, and I'm watching tonight with my 20-month-old son, who is a happy, healthy whole food plant-based eater as well. I can't imagine living any other way. It's the best decision we've ever made and the best gift we could give to our son.
Made my whole evening. I can die a happy man. That's exactly what I exist for. That's wonderful. Thank you for that. That's so inspiring.
Mary asks, are there any meal delivery services that are whole food plant-based that would help those with trouble cooking this way?
Absolutely. There's getting to be more and more of them. I get every week in my inbox, I get an ad for a new meal delivery service. Ooh, we do plant-based, whole food plant-based. And I don't have any names for you, but seek and you shall find. Do a whole plant-based home delivery meal service, and you will find. Seek and you definitely will find. So absolutely, and that's such a great positive sign. I wish these people great success, but that says good things for all of us. I'm very heartened when I see those kind of organizations doing that work. They got their ear to the zeitgeist, and they're pitch perfect. It's great that they're doing that.
Let's see this. Brett it said, highly recommend PBNSG as well as another resource. And he put the email address in there. It's another resource for, I'm sure you're familiar with PBNSG, Dr. Klaper. I think you've spoken a number of times to that group. That's a large plant-based nutrition
support group, right? Yes, they're good. The folks, they're out of Michigan, and they're good folks. And yes, I've spoken to their PBNSG several times. They're good people. Yay.
Susan says, are there still some times when pharmaceutical intervention must be added to plant-based eating?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if I'm seeing someone for the first time, um, and they've got runaway high blood pressure or runaway inflammatory arthritis, you bet I don't hesitate to get these folks on beta blockers and ARBs or any medication, but it's with the understanding that unlike my colleagues who say, you will take these the rest of your life. But what I tell them, I'm looking for, you're going to be on this for 6 months at the most. That may be a year, but during this time, you're going to learn how to eat low fat, low salt, high protein, whole food plant-based diet. And I want to get you off these pills, especially if they have weight to lose or whatever. But these drugs can be life-saving, but they should be used in a time-limited manner. And that includes Ozempic. I've got where I'm working here at Aroga. They prescribe Ozempic. It's a lifestyle medicine clinic. They are strongly attached to the Pillars Lifestyle Medicine, but the demand for Ozempic is so great among the public that the doctors here acquiesce and they give a prescription for Ozempic, but it's done with the caveat, this is a 6-month supply I'm giving you. And during this time, I want you to learn how to fill your belly up with whole plant foods. So when we get to the end of this and taper it off, you won't balloon the weight back up again. So in that way, the pharmaceuticals can be a useful bridge to preserve people's health and function. But I'm and with rare exceptions, type 1 diabetes maybe, I bridle when I hear lifetime medications. And so, but if you need these medicines, thank heavens they exist, but they should be given on a time-limited basis.
There are a number of great presentation. One is Laurel says, be happy, Dr. Klaper. Every time I see one of your presentations, it helps me stay the course.
Yay, good. Stay the course. I'm 77 years old and I feel great. I take no medications. And I'm where I wanted to be when I got to be 77. I'm feeling like I should. And so I urge people, stay the course. This is going to take you good places.
Let's see, there was a question from Amy. Are you from Wisconsin?
Am I from Wisconsin? Not officially, but when I was a boy back in the 1950s, the great polio epidemics would roll through the big cities every summer. And my mother had an uncle with a dairy and mink farm way up in northern Wisconsin, up in Langlade County, up by Rhinelander and Eagle River. Our school would be over in Chicago on June 4th. And on June 5th, we would be on a train up to Elko, Wisconsin, and I spent my first 16 summers on my uncle's dairy farm, milking cows and driving tractors and slinging hay bales and experiencing the natural world. That's where my love for nature came from, those colorful summers up on the farm. And so I've got a soft spot in my heart for all things Wisconsin. It was such a powerful shaping influence, and the people were so lovely as well. So yes, I have a Wisconsin connection, even though I'm not native from here.
I'm going to jump to Dr. Liberman. Had a note here in regard to the plant-based meal service. And I should have mentioned this myself. Plant Joy here in Wisconsin, he's got the link up here, is a great resource. So for those of you who are familiar with Amberly, she runs that, and it makes great plant-based food and delivers it.
Great, recognize it and patronize those folks. Don't let them go bankrupt, man. But send them the business. We need them doing what they're doing. It's a holy service they're providing.
And Colette says, great, clear presentation. Thank you. Becky says, Rebecca Schultz, what are your thoughts on, well, and you covered some of this, whoops. What are your thoughts on salmon roe and other omega-3 supplements versus plant-based omega-3 as ALA versus EPA and DHA?
Yes. Again, I'm not for using any products that comes from the fish, especially their eggs. Those creatures are here for their own reason, and we're decimating them. And fish do not make DHA. Fish do not make omega-3 fats. Those fats are essential to us, but they are made by plants like every other long chain omega-3 fat. But these plants happen to be algae cells that float in the ocean, and the salmon swim with their mouths open all day, swallowing algae cells. And it's the algae cells that wind up in the fish's flesh, and that it gets squeezed out for make fish oil. But it's really algae oil. It's really algal in its original source. Well, again, we're running out of fish. Plus, you get all the contaminants. What's in that fish's roe? You know, how much dioxin, how much mercury. Why take a chance? They're now growing these very same DHA-producing algae cells in these big vats of clean seawater, and then they harvest the algae cells and extract the DHA directly from the algae, and you leave out the middle fish. And I think that's, the way to do it. And so whatever in the salmon's roe, let it be there. And there's probably stuff you don't want to be eating and taking into your body in the way of mercury and dioxin and microplastics. So it sounds fishy to me.
So Lonnie says plant-based cooking classes are a great way to start, along with cleaning out your pantry of bad or processed foods and dairy. Plant-based milk is great, and I certainly agree with that. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's
Lonnie
some great
also says Plant Joy Milwaukee is a great food delivery service with lots of variety and also tasty.
There's some great plant-based cooking classes online. Works, right in your own living room, right in your own kitchen there. So yes, take advantage of what's around us.
Becky Schultz adds, put a link in there for that daily longevity diet, the Walter Longo diet. Lonnie said plantjoy.net also gets cooking classes. Pumpkin, and mentions pumpkin tofu is called pumfu, and also a great source of protein.
Look at that. Science marches on, plant-based nutrition marches on. That's great. Wonderful. You're gonna give it a trial. Now that you mentioned it, watch, I'll see it next time I'm in Whole Foods there. Pump foo.
Pumfu.
Great.
We've got
Okay.
about 5 minutes left here, and I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of these, but we'll go for the last 5 minutes. Lonnie also has a link up here for nutritionfacts.org that Dr. Klaper mentioned. Andrea asks, how can I lose weight with PCOS? Have been following mostly whole food plant-based and haven't lost weight.
PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, is a frustrating condition for everybody, the woman who has it, as well as the doctors. It's turning out that the problem are refined carbohydrates. If I remember the physiology, when you eat carbohydrates, and we're talking about baked goods, pastas, etc., the body responds, of course, with a surge of insulin to move the sugar that's making up those carbohydrates into your cells. Well, the insulin apparently suppresses the binding protein that binds to testosterone. And women make testosterone in their ovaries and their adrenal glands. And normally it's bound up with a carrier protein. But apparently in some women, the insulin that they're secreting in response to carbohydrates suppresses the carrier protein. So now you've got more free androgen, more free testosterone, and it starts exerting a androgenic effects, and the women wind up with a stocky male body, with facial hair, with body hair, difficulty getting pregnant, irregular periods. There's masculinization of their body from too much much testosterone, and that's being driven by the insulin that they're creating from their diet. So not you can you need some carbohydrates, but really cut way back. Stop all flour products, all refined sugars of all types, and really shift your diet to, again, whole plant foods. Lots of big salads, lots of hearty vegetable soups, big plates of steamed greens, and the low glycemic lentils and beans and chickpeas. And whole fruits to a real rarity there. If you look, in fact, there's a wonderful book by a British gynecologist, Dr. Bajekal, Bajekal. Dr. Nitu, Nitu is her first name, Bajekal. She's an OBGYN in London. And she wrote this wonderful book, I think, called PCOS Free, or Live Free of PCOS. Get her book, and it's a paperback. You can download it off Amazon. But basically, even if you just Google PCOS diet, they're going to steer you, if it's a good, reliable source, to a diet very low in foods that raise your blood sugar, that raise your insulin level. So it turns out to be carbohydrates are the culprit with these particular women.
David says, thank you, thank you, thank you, in all caps, Dr. Klaper. In 1992, I discovered your 1987 book, Pregnancy, Children, and the Vegan Diet. My wife and I, who were already plant-based, raised our son with it from birth. He's now 32 and enjoying excellent health while maintaining a whole food plant-based diet.
It's I wrote this little book again back in the 1980s because I had so many pregnant women coming in my young practice and who wanted to go plant-based. So I wrote this little book. And that's in dim history, it's no longer in print. But every so often I'm at a talk and a woman will come up with kind of a sheepish look on her face, and she pulls out my blue book on pregnancy, children, and says, Dr. Klaper, would you sign this book, give an autograph it? And he says, and by the way, we followed this when I was pregnant with my daughter, and I'd like you to meet my daughter. And she turned out, there's this 38-year-old woman who's got kids of her own. And time is so amazing and so beautiful. But look how it all comes full circle. It's a beautiful thing, no doubt.
It's just wonderful. Yeah, it's, and you talking with all the medical students who, if they follow this idea, can have that opportunity to have one after another, after another, after another.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Liberman put in a few links here to the wisconsincardiology.com where he's got some different articles. One is, but where do I get my protein? Another one is beware of the plastics.
What are,
Stephanie says, I occasionally cook with date sugar in whole food plant-based desserts. Is date sugar inflammatory due to the processing in its date paste a better choice?
Yeah, so date paste is the better choice. If you're going to be using a sweetener, use date paste. It's the most benign. It's got phytonutrients and iron and all sorts of good things that are in the dates. And I just want to tell you what a jewel you have, what a treasure of a resource you have in Dr. Lieberman. That to have him on your team as your medical director is a blessing, and good for him for putting out those articles on his website and being such a positive resource for everyone. So pranam to Dr. Lieberman. I'd like to meet him next time I'm in Milwaukee. My niece runs the freshwater biology lab at the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, and I'm going to be back to see her in June. Her nephew is graduating. No, her son is graduating from high school, and so I'm coming back for the graduation. Maybe I can meet you and Dr. Lieberman. I'd like to do that
Great,
while
be
if we
great.
have, yeah.
Go to a baseball game together.
Yes,
Uh,
that'd be great.
Brett asks, or it says, Dr. Lieberman or Dr. Klaper, I know the research is still ongoing for how for COVID, long COVID, but I've been whole food plant-based for 10 years now. I got infected with COVID 3 years ago. My gut has never been the same. I recently had a microbiome test done, and it looks like my bacteria or bacterioid bacterioidetes and bacterioids are very high.
Bacteria, yeah, are very high.
Bacterioid,
Bac- Bacteria,
bacterioidetes and
bacteroidetes. Bacteroidetes is a
bacteroides and bacteroides are very high, as well
yeah.
as other beneficial probiotics like lacto and bifidobacterial that are low to non-existent. So it seems like dysbiosis. Any recommendations?
Yeah, you need to reset your microbiome, it sounds, but that might be the tail of the dog. Hopefully there isn't any ongoing problem down in the gut there. You might consider a brief water fast, a 3-day or a 5-day water fast under supervision, which doctors are now doing remotely. True North can supervise you there, or I can. And then start with low glycemic foods and a big dollop of probiotics to see if you can reset the microbiome. But there's is a complex issue, and that might be just a feature of it, not the cause of it. So keep watching the literature, keep doing those Google searches, and on long COVID and microbiome. Dysbiosis is the word, and see what you can learn. We're all feeling our way on this one. I'm not an expert on it for sure.
We do just a couple more here because we're already over. Lonnie says, do you recommend this order for eating? Veggies first, then more healthy protein and carbs, then healthy oils, avocados, then plant-based sweet treat if you have room. I'm not sure if that's would be for a meal or.
Not sure the question. I'm a big avocado fan. Don't eat 8 of them in a day, but
Well, when you do when you do when you're sitting down for a meal, do you have a, let's say for dinner, do you have an order and you do things? I know like Dr. McDougall would eat the greens first.
yes, right. Now, I'm not trying to lose weight. If you're trying to lose weight, then absolutely you want the least calorie dense foods first. You want a salad first, you want a bowl of vegetable soup, you want a big plate of steamed greens before you get into the starches and avocados and denser, fattier foods there. So if you're trying to lose weight, fill your belly up with the salads and soups and greens first. if you're already skinny or if it's not an issue, doesn't matter a whole lot as far as when to eat the fats. I don't believe, but it's okay to, if you're going to have an avocado, have it in chunks during the course of the whole meal there.
Let's see, Bethany says I'm 65 and a bit overweight. Doctor says I have osteopenia, recommends I take vitamin D3 and calcium supplements. I've read that calcium supplements aren't the best option. I'm trying to increase walking with weights per her chiropractor recommendation. What do you think? And she's been plant-based for 8 years.
Absolutely. You make your bones stronger by using them. Just like muscles, you got to use them to make them stronger. Your bones, you need to put on a little light 6-pound weight vest and go walking. Every step you take, a little while, weight goes down your spine and down your hips and strengthens your bones. There's 1,000 steps in a mile. So if you walk a mile with a little weighted vest, 1,000 times you've put that stress down your bones there, and the bones will respond and they will start laying out new bone tissue. It's not a calcium deficiency, and it's been shown that taking any more than 200 milligrams of calcium is too much. Your blood calcium goes way up for hours. And if you take 1,000 milligrams of calcium or 500 milligrams like they're recommending, you're hypercalcemic for hours. And calcium's involved in blood clotting. And it's been shown that women who take these high dose calcium tablets have higher risk of strokes and sudden death. So all the way around, get your calcium out of fortified. If you know 200 milligrams at the most in a supplement, and you can drink some calcium fortified soy milk or orange juice, but don't be taking large dose calcium tablets. And even then, taking calcium and expecting your bones to get stronger doesn't work like that. You got to go out and use those bones. You can do it with elastic bands. You can anything that puts a stress on the bones will strengthen them, but you got to use it or lose it.
And let's one last question here. Shelley is, I mean, there are a bunch of them left, but Shelley is asking, is there anything special you need to do for a baby that you want to have eat plant-based? I don't know if that means, is there anything that you would recommend that the baby eats or that babies like
the
to
baby.
eat? Or...
You've got a baby that you want to start on a plant-based nutrition. Oh, great. Absolutely. And there's a wonderful book called Nourish, Nourish, by vegan dietitian Brenda Davis and her colleagues, and they go through each of the life cycles, and they've got a big section on how to feed an infant and how to start them on a plant-based diet, and babies are, if all they're presented, if you give them pureed kale or broccoli, after about the third or fourth time, they start to like it, and they don't know enough not to, and they may spit it out once or twice. Be persistent, and after a while, not only do they tolerate it, but you wind up a little toddler that chews on raw broccoli. It becomes some of their favorite foods there. So start early with the good foods and be persistent, and you're going to instill lifetime of great eating habits that will be the greatest gift you can give that child, one of them at least, for sure.
Thank you so much, Dr. Klaper. I'm going to mention here as a quick reminder to everybody, our next monthly meeting will be Thursday, March 13th at 6 p.m. Central Time. Our featured speaker will be PCRM Exam Room podcast host Chuck Carroll. If you'd like to receive notice of, and you know Chuck Carroll.
I know Chuck. Say hi to Chuck when you get him on the show there. And
if you'd like to receive notice of this or other upcoming PBNOW events that are not currently on our list, just Google us at PBNOW, where you can subscribe and receive email notice of our upcoming events. Also, if you'd like to check out parts of this meeting or some of our past meetings, by the way, our highest ranked past meeting is a Dr. Klaper meeting. Just go to the video library section on our website or search for us on YouTube under PBNOW, and you can go back, watch entire talks, or skim through the parts of each presentation that may be of particular interest to you. This meeting should be on YouTube probably within a week. Thanks again to Dr. Josh Lieberman and to our special featured speaker, Dr. Michael Klaper, for sharing their valuable time and knowledge with us tonight. Thanks so much.
It's been a
Thanks,
pleasure.
Terry.
Put our website, movingmedforward.org on the bottom. People can learn what we're doing, and if they feel moved to do a tax-deductible donation, that would be appreciated. But put our Moving Med Forward address down there. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. This is wonderful. Terry, you're doing a great job running this wonderful organization. So thank you for the invitation. Blessings of health and happiness on everybody. Be well. I'm sure we'll cross down the plant-based road. Be well.
Thank you, Dr. Klaper. Thanks, everybody, for coming tonight, and hope to see you next time.